This is Oft Off Topic, a show where two men with the attention spans of a squirrel try and fail to stay on topic with today's subject. Where will their oral meanderings take us? Well, stick around and listen, because today's Oft Off Topic is... Betty Crocker, that famous cook that everybody knows and loves. Nate, what do you know about Betty Crocker?
Because Betty Crocker is real, isn't she? Huh.
We will actually find out in a few moments if Betty Crocker
Yeah, I mean, like, because you mentioned doing this, I'm like, oh, okay, the company. And then the way you've been talking is like, time out, hold up, everyone stop, shut up. Is this a real person? Like, for real? Like, I mean, I don't believe it, but...
You're like, man, I'm not certain.
I mean, it's not like a religion.
My reality just enough that...
It's like a religion. Like, no! I am a Betty Crocker atheist.
And then the skies parted and there she appeared. Well, actually, this whole research got kicked off because I was like, hey, I want to make myself a pineapple upside down cake for Christmas. And by chance, it just led me to learning about the history of Betty Crocker, because apparently she was one of the first people to put that recipe in a cookbook. I also learned during this experience that baking powder can go bad. Did you know that?
No idea. I mean, I guess I noticed on the expiration date on there, but I didn't really take it seriously.
Yeah, but I mean, salt has an expiration date, and you know that doesn't expire. But anyways, apparently if it's... Because mine was dated to expire in 2020, and that was 3 years ago as of this recording, or 4 years ago now, I guess. So, after 4 years, the stuff goes bad, and your cake will not rise. I learned that the hard way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
so I mean, at least it turned poisonous.
Right? All of a sudden, you just like mix it with water and mustard gas just comes pouring out of your container and just kills everybody in your apartment building.
The cops come in, another case of the whole family being killed. Damn you, Betty Crocker.
Expired baking powder once again. When will they learn? Anyways, we'll get our story started and we'll figure out about the story of Betty Crocker. Right now. October 1921, Minneapolis, Minnesota. She started the Washburn Crosby Company of gold medal flour fame. You know that flour that you see at the store all the time says gold medal flour? Yeah, these same people.
Okay, yeah, I guess, it took me a second actually. I was like, gold medal? Wait, but yeah, sure enough.
Yeah, there's a big gold medal on the front, and apparently I guess it won gold medals back in the day for flour. Anyways, the Washburn Crosby Company of gold medal flour fame, they decided to put an ad on the back cover of the Saturday Evening Post. The ad was basically a bunch of puzzle pieces printed on a piece of paper, and you were to cut this piece of paper apart and glue all those pieces back onto another piece of paper and mail in the completed jigsaw puzzle, and you would win a prize. That prize would be a pincushion in the shape of a bag of gold medal flour. Good promotion right there. Not only do you get people to mail in stuff to you, you also get to send them merchandise of your own. And it was also a huge success, too. 30,000 people returned the puzzle. And I got their neat little pincushion bag. Also, on top of these people turning in the puzzle, they got a whole lot of cooking questions through their mail. A lot of people having questions on baking aspects like, why does my cake crack on top? Or how do you make a one-crust cherry pie? A lot of these questions were also due to the fact that there wasn't really a lot of standardization in the 1920s. Like, if you went to buy a cake pan, there was no standard, 9 by 13 size. There was no 9-inch round. You just kind of had what pans you had on hand. And also, stoves and ovens and the such, too, weren't really standardized back then. A lot of them didn't even have, temperature gauges on them, and a lot of people were still cooking on wood stoves back in the day. So there were, not a lot of recipe books outside, family recipe books and stuff like that, I guess. People were confused during these times, writing in being like, hey, people at the Washburn Crosby Company, we need help baking. And all these questions eventually overwhelmed their service lines, and they were just like, hey, we'd set up just a sole question answering segment of our company.
Like a phone line or like a TV
show? Or no, like a write-in line, yeah.
A write-in line? Okay.
Yeah. I guess the term line is a bad term to use because, immediately phone line pops to mind. But they just decided, hey, we're going to publish ourselves a cookie advice column. And that way we can publish this, people will buy it, and there'll be more advertising for us. Yay! The first run of letters were answered by an all-male marketing team at the company, and while they knew how to market products, they weren't really great bakers, and they weren't really great at writing directions and everything, so the initial run out of answers were very, sanitized and kind of hard to read and very technical. So they decided, hey, most of the bakers out there are women, most people writing in are women too, so we're going to make a whole female service team based around this to answer the questions. They basically had a test kitchen there at the Washburn Crosby Company, and it was all women cooks that worked there, and they were the ones who made recipes, tested them out, and see how everything worked. So they basically got on the line with all these women and were like, hey, we're going to make you known as the Betty Crocker Test Kitchens, and you are going to be the ones answering all these questions that people write in. And they decided on the Betty Crocker Test Kitchens because, well, Betty Crocker isn't real. No, you're right in that initial thought. But they decided instead of being like the test kitchens at Washburn Crosby, it'd be better to call them the Betty Crocker test kitchens, run by Betty Crocker herself.
Was there a Betty Crocker a real person, or just like a bunch of guys standing around going, I don't know, Betty Crocker, why not?
Basically, a bunch of guys standing around going, Betty Crocker, why not? They
There you
decided
go.
they decided on Betty because it was a popular name at the time, and they also found it warm and an inviting name that people liked and related to. And the last name Crocker was in honor of the recently retired executive William Crocker from the company. There you go. It was literally just a thing taking people being like, what's a good welcoming name? And one that we can honor our old boss. Just choke prostitutes to death in front of them and not get us fired.
Better name like Gertrude Mengele.
This being the 1920s, that name would have made perfect sense. And then all of a sudden, like 1940s combined, like,
Whoops.
oh, whoopee.
We should probably change that.
Then they just changed the last name from Mengele to Menge, and then that also didn't work later, so.
Get the same PR firm as the BMW. It's like BMW's like, what? Nazis? We've never heard of them.
That happened on the other side of the country from us. So all the women that worked for the Washburn Crosby Company were asked to submit a signature to be used for the Betty Crocker brand, and the winner was a secretary named Florence Lindbergh, and her submission is still the signature you see today. They picked it because, again, it looked friendly, like the name Betty Crocker sounded friendly.
Does Lindbergh have anything to do with the other Lindbergh?
As far as I know, no.
Okay. No babies involved.
Nope, no babies were involved. And no Lindbergh cheese either, I don't think. There you go. That's an obscure one.
That one took me off guard. Like,
Yeah.
I guess there is cheese in there.
Yeah, the Lindbergh cheese. It's the really stinky one from the old Tom and Jerry cartoons, apparently.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, that's what I remember it from.
When I think cheese, I always think of Wallace and Gromit.
I guess they do have a cheese thing, don't they?
Oh, yeah, dude's all about cheese. They flew to the moon just like to eat it.
It is made of cheese. So this new write-in questions and answers setup came across at just the right time as Washburn Crosby's company's Eat More Wheat campaign was becoming a huge success, and more letters came flooding in. Soon the company proclaimed 2 million women have learned to make perfectly delicious small breads and pastries every time they bake, thanks to Betty Crocker. So things are going.
Men at the time were like, women learning?
Ha! Burn them! Burn them all!
They're like, wait, it's in the kitchen. Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, there is going to be a little bit of pushback coming up soon from men on this. Yeah, so a little prophetic on your part. But for right now, it's 1924. Things are going well, and what's the next logical step? Well, radio. The Washburn Crosby Company had just bought the radio station in Minnesota, and it was WLAG, known as the Call of the North. Well, they changed the name to WCCO, and decided it was time to unleash some Betty on all of us. Enter Marjorie Husted, an employee of the Washburn Crosby...
You realize they had to change the WLAG because of all the times it started and stopped. Waka waka waka!
Boo!
It's lag! I'm funny.
Boo!
Yes, I deserve that boo.
Yes, you do. Anyways, back to Marjorie Husted. She is an employee of Washburn Crosby, and her original role was leading a team of 5 people that would go over the baking questions mailed in to Betty Crocker and formulate the responses if Betty was a real person. You know, they weren't just writing it back, be like, hey, this is the company, blah, blah. They would actually write back the answer, be like, oh, hello, dear, this is Betty Crocker, just writing to say blah, blah, blah. Anyways, that was her job, was just writing back to people, and now she was suddenly tasked with writing the script for the radio show and also doing the voice of Betty Crocker at the local station, a job she would wind up having for the next 2 decades. The show not only dealt with cooking recipes and kitchen tips, but also bled over into general household chore info, getting stains out of clothes, etc. Also, here's kind of funny, apparently from Betty's first broadcast entitled Good Food, where basically she's going over how to properly feed your husband. Apparently in this first episode, women get to learn that, quote unquote, a woman who produced unsavory meals risked dire consequences. They went on to say that, quote, if you load a man's stomach with soggy boiled cabbage, greasy fried potatoes, can you wonder that he wants to start a fight or go out and commit crime? We should be grateful that he does nothing worse than display a lot of temper. Okay, is it just me or does that sound anti-Irish to you?
Yeah.
Well, the whole soggy boiled cabbage and greasy fried potatoes and going out and starting fights.
Right?
That sounds kind of anti-Irish right there. Yeah. Anyways.
Woman goes to work, woman goes outside, big old black guy, her friend's like, did you make soggy food for your husband?
Well, that explains all the problem. That excuse too, I mean, the dude could go out and do anything he wanted. Yeah, I beat and raped that bartender. My wife made me soggy potatoes.
Oh, well, case dismissed.
Oh, well, that's case dismissed. We're going to send your wife to prison then. Times were different back then. The show was a hit, and 3 years later, 12 different radio stations were broadcasting the Betty Crocker radio show, and the script was being read by 12 different Betty Crockers, which kind of might make things interesting, too. If you're like a traveling salesman and you just start hearing different Betty Crockers across the country, plowing lonely housewives and being like, hey, do you know there's different Betty Crockers all over the world? They're just like, shut up.
Fuck me, you a vacuum salesman.
Yep, exactly. That's pretty much exactly what I was thinking. One of our eventual topics on the show was how to get handsome young bachelors. They were basically talking about how women could find themselves a good husband and make a good wife. This actually got themselves a bump in male listenership because they wanted to learn what women wanted in a man and how a man could be a good man, blah, 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 blah. But this whole setup actually led to a bunch of marriage proposals to Betty Crocker being mailed in. And, well, as the kids say nowadays, men simped for Betty Crocker back in the day, and times have not changed a whole lot.
Clearly.
Yeah, basically. And eventually this did actually lead to a marriage, because one of the marriage proposals went in, and one of the ladies in the test kitchen read it, was like, oh, this dude seems sweet, and eventually they became pen pals and got married later.
I mean, I hear about that stuff like that happening, especially from back then. It's just like, dude, like, you don't even know this person. I mean, but then again, that's what happened. I remember my grandma and grandpa, my dad's side, like, they knew each other for 2 weeks, and then she ran off with him and got married. Like, okay.
Yeah. She was probably escaping a horrible household as a child or something.
Oh, yeah, come to find out later on.
Yeah, it's one of those, a lot of those stories, it's like, well, why'd you run off when you were 13? It's like, well, I loved him a lot. And then later on you find out it's like, oh, yeah, the dad was diddling him and the mom was an alcoholic and all this bad stuff. And
I don't know.
That's why you ran away.
Yeah, I don't know that deeply, but no, she was escaped. She was like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
For it.
It wasn't so much I loved your grandpa. It was just he was a way out of my situation.
He was there. And he was in the military, so, you know.
Yeah. It's always like, think back to your grandparents and how much they loved each other. It's like, my grandparents were divorced, so, I mean, obviously not a lot of love there. Yeah, actually, eventually, too, the Betty Crocker show kind of almost became like an early version of Dear Abby, another fake person, because people stopped writing in necessarily about baking questions and stuff. We're just like, hey, Betty, my children don't respect me, and questions like that. And, it just kind of go into little heart-to-heart talks. Good times for everybody. April
they don't
19...
respect you. Like, back then, it's like, they don't respect you. I think you should beat them more.
Pretty much that's it. And if the beatings don't work, you just give them to an orphanage and let them beat them. Don't waste your time on a child you can't fix. Get rid of them. Have another. April 1927, and the Washburn Crosby Company ran a promotion. Send us 70 cents and we'll send you a small wooden box full of Betty Crocker's best recipes. This was actually a huge success and laid the groundwork for the eventual Betty Crocker cookbook that would later come on. You can also find these small wooden boxes full of recipes for about $40 online for my quick researching. Piece of vintage history, you can buy them off of eBay and such. Which, I don't know, seems kind of cheap for something from back in like the 20s and 30s, but if they made enough of them, I guess they're kind of everywhere.
True.
Yeah. 1928, and the Washburn Crosby Company merges with 3 other milling companies, and General Mills is born. If you're ever wondering why General Mills is called General Mills, there you go. Initial stock offerings were $65 a share, or about $1,200 a share in today's money. Currently, General Mills is trading at $65 per share, or about $65 in today's money.
But sounds like things didn't go very well. I was like, at first hearing, like, oh, it's but stayed the same. But then, just like you said, today's money versus yesterday's money.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing if you bought 65, like one share way back when General Mills stock first came out, it's probably split so many times you'd have 100 shares by now, maybe, or more. Because, stock does do that every once in a while. They're like, hey, we're splitting our stocks. Now instead of like 50 shares, you have 100.
Yeah, which is good and bad.
Yeah, it's both good and bad. I am not a stock market expert. If somebody else is, feel free to fill me in.
Me neither. Like, I wish, like, man, if I knew about the stock market, I'd be in a lot better position than I am in now. But
right, it seems like free money if you know what you're doing.
Oh yeah,
and it kind of is too. If you bet on the stock market very conservatively, you can usually make like 5 or 6% interest a year or gains a year, which isn't a lot. But I mean, if you could throw $1 million at something, that's not nothing.
I mean, I've been hearing some things how like you need money to even try to do this, but how rich people basically get to keep their money. The one thing that really blew me away is rich people putting their money on life insurance, and then so they put $1 million in life insurance, right? Well, then they borrow from their life insurance, and so they just keep on paying it back. And the government, they can't tax it. If everything goes bad, it stays the same. If you die, then it goes to your family. Like, that's how people are getting away with a lot of shit, is by buying these life insurance policies and then borrowing the money off the life insurance policy. So
Tracks.
money, yay!
Money, yay! Like they say, the old saying is you have to have money to make money.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, but boy, it sure helps.
Yeah, Jenny, my wife's a therapist, and she obviously doesn't give me details, but she's definitely mentioned like she has some well-to-do people, and just like they don't even do anything anymore. They're just like, oh yeah, I bought this, that, the other company, and I just kind of like go golfing all day, and
now my money works for itself and makes me money.
That's exactly it.
Yep. It's just once you get enough money, you can just kind of live off your investments. Must be nice.
Meanwhile, Jenny's like, oh, okay, well, let me see your problems. As she's like seething, like, you motherfucker.
Also, she's like, I should charge more rates, or raise my rates just for this one particular person.
Right.
Fuck them. So we're at 1929 now, and General Mills is in full force, and they take one Marjorie Husted and put her in charge of a staff of 40, and the Betty Crocker test kitchens are officially born. This is where recipes were dreamed up and tested until things got right. And this is actually kind of good timing, because the 1930s hit, and the Great Depression comes about. And Betty Crocker was right there to help people, and basically their big thing also became a source of ways to make your money stretch, and also they, be like, hey man, we know times are tough, everybody's poor. Here's the easiest way to make your 1 pound of ground beef last for 2 months. Not only that, they would give you tips for stretching your supplies and make your money last, but also they would start reading letters on the air about people's day-to-day struggles, being like, hey, my husband just lost his job, we have 32 kids and no money, so on and so forth. And again, this is kind of like the Dear Abby thing, where people could listen and be like, hey, my life is other people's lives are just as bad as mine. Everybody's miserable. Yay, I feel better now.
Told him to sing.
Yeah, basically, things were tough all over, man, as Cheech and Chong once said. Yeah.
And Betty Crocker's like, I know things are tough, but here's the best recipe to eat your children.
Yeah, exactly. Remember, the smaller they are, the less you have to cook them, because they're tender already. Once they're about, over 18, they're starting to get tough and leathery. The older they are, the longer you boil
little
them.
Timmy will taste great with a little spices.
Right? Toss in his shoes with him while you boil and let the leather soak into some of the flavors. You can eat that, too. Also, what the Betty Crocker is big on helping people do is updating their old recipes for the modern conveniences. Like we were talking earlier, there's no standardized pans and the such. That was one thing Betty Crocker actually helped get going, was standardized pans like the 9x13, the 8-inch pie pan. Like I was saying before that, people just kind of had whatever pans are laying around. Standardization helped a lot of these recipes go along, because it would be a bummer when they're like, take your 10-inch cake pan, all you got is a bunch of rectangle pans.
Right.
And also, too, right around this time was more and more people were getting refrigerators and stoves, and that was kind of starting to change the landscape for people, too. Because, again, in the early days, a lot of ovens didn't even have a thermostat on there. You just kind of went by feel and guess on how hot your stove was. Or again, wood stoves, too, were still big.
True. One could say that.
One could say that.
In fact, one did say that. It was you.
1933, and Betty Crocker's... Here's a... I guess this is her first cookbook, more or less, and it's called Betty Crocker's 101 Delicious Bisquick Creations, as made and served by well-known gracious hostesses, famous chefs, distinguished epicures, and smart luminaries of movie land. That is the entire title of the book. Would you like that one more time, Nate?
Yes, I would, because I think I tuned out midway through.
Honestly, so did I somewhere about halfway through. I'm like, oh god, this keeps going.
I mean, they give some of these fucking light novels a run for their money.
Right? Here's the cooking book. Here's the cookbook's title again. Betty Crocker's 101 Delicious Bisquick Creations, as made and served by well-known gracious hostesses, famous chefs, distinguished epicures, and smart luminaries of movie land.
Editor's like, is there any way we can shorten that? No.
Yeah. They could just shorten it to be as served by the hoi polloi or something like that. Just,
Every word in that is important. You remove one word, the whole thing comes falling down like a stack of cards.
This thing is a masterpiece.
How dare you, sir, question my title or my naming conventions?
And the other's like, that's the last time we hired Orson Welles to write our stuff.
Now meet my son. Stephen Foster, who stands with 2 legs and also looks around, and he... Whatever. I lost that midway. But you get the point.
That's how you're going for there, yes.
Yeah, the point made. A total fuck up. So,
we are now in 1936, and a painting of Betty Crocker is commissioned, and Since she didn't actually exist, they did a composite of some of the women who worked in the Betty Crocker test kitchens. Basically, I believe it was 7 different gals. They just sort of like amalgamated them into one woman and were like, well, there you go, that's Betty Crocker. They would go on to update the portrait again in 1955, 65, 69, 72, 80, 86, and 96. And they all roughly look the same from what I saw. I mean, there's slightly different. It's like, oh, this one she's looking slightly to the left. This one's slightly to the right.
I mean, I guess. I mean, they're trying to maintain consistency. Fair enough.
It also helps too when you go in front of the shareholder and you're like, hey, new Betty Crocker, new look. Yeah, whenever you see like big companies do stuff that seems stupid, I'm pretty sure it's just so they can go in front of their shareholders and be like, look what we're cooking up. Woo! And, try to get those. Yeah. We're into the 1940s and World War II hits, and once again, Betty Crocker is there to help. Now she's readily dispensing advice relating to wartime rations and the best way to make those last. They also published the Betty Crocker Cookbook of All-Purpose Baking, which also dealt with wartime ration recipes. And apparently they decided to have a much shorter title for their next book. People don't have time to read for 5 minutes. Yeah.
They erred the opposite direction. Cook! That's it.
Yeah, just cook. See more inside. Oh yeah, fun fact too. You know, you always hear about, you watch the old World War II movies and it's like, ooh, we're fine with the rationing because it's better for the war and it helps our military. Well, that's all kind of BS. People lost their shit over rationing back then too. I don't need to ration. Yeah, people didn't even want us to go into World War II. Like half the country was against it. They're like, let them deal with their own crap.
I mean, that's like COVID. They're like, oh my God, everyone's freaking out masking this whole new people. And I remember reading about the Spanish flu. People were just as pissed. And I saw comic, like old school political comics. They were basically really pissed at the church because once again, the church is like, you don't need a mask. Let's all kiss. Let's mouth kiss as we're giving out communion. Instead of bread, we're going to have our priest spit in your mouth.
And thus Uki mouth was invented. 1942, the first product under the Betty Crocker label is released. It was dried soup mix. Cake mixes wouldn't show up for another 5 years when ginger cake mix was released in 1947.
I love soup. I love soup, but I have a weird thing about it. Like, I have a problem thinking about soup as main dish. It's great. Like, when Jenny actually makes it and, like, we have soup for dinner, I enjoy it. It's fine. But in my mind's eye, when I think soup
is a side.
Yeah, exactly. It's a side. So
the alliteration is even there, too.
Right. I mean, like, she was like, oh, I'm making soup. Like, oh, okay. She's like, you don't want soup? I'm like, I don't necessarily want it. And when she makes it, it's great. I can't get over the whole, like, really is the main dish?
Salad is a main dish, or is that a side dish as well?
I'm more comfortable thinking of salad as the main dish because, I don't know. And I understand it doesn't make any effing sense. I understand that. But there it is.
So my next question is, so do you call it soup and salad or salad and soup since you consider salad more of the main dish?
Oh, no, soup and salad always. It doesn't matter. I can't. Okay. Soup and salad, the salad and soup just sounds off to me.
It kind of does, doesn't it? Everybody says soup and salad, not salad and soup. Even though salad and soup is alphabetically correct.
I mean, I think maybe just like anybody who did say salad and soup, I believe they've been killed.
They probably have. I think in like 1974, the government put out a big proclamation. A lot of people rounded up, put into camps.
I was going to camps too.
Yeah, big cover up back in the day.
Just like the Japanese internment camps, this one was really kept hush hush.
You heard it first here on Oft Off Topic. Also, when I first saw ginger cake mix, I was like, that sounds weird. But then I realized gingerbread. Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because you don't think ginger flavored cake, really.
No, I don't. I mean, yeah, I guess.
But then you think gingerbread, and you're like, oh yeah, that's just ginger cake. Huh.
Yep. I mean, it just the term cake. I don't know. Like when I think cake. Like happy birthday to you. There's frosting and there's stuff on it. But I guess cake is a kind of a sugary bread.
I think of that song "Never There" a lot too.
And I'm sure I may have said this before. In Europe, Subway can't call their bread. They actually got sued, and they have to refer to it as cake.
Really? Yeah, because so much sugar in it and stuff.
Yeah, because of sugar content.
Honestly, if they spin that right, they could actually get more sales out of that.
Right?
Yeah, the old sandwich shop ballsy enough to put their meats on cake.
Fuck your health.
And speaking of that ginger cake mix that was released in 1947, the original advertisement for this actually reads in big bold letters across the top, "Man beats mother-in-law," and below it in tiny letters, "with Betty Crocker cake mix, making a better cake than her." Oh. I found that kind of funny.
That is pretty funny.
Yeah. Also, apparently, these cake mixes were not so popular at first when they came out. Because apparently baking a good cake was considered the true test of a woman's homemaker abilities back in the day. And if a woman all of a sudden could just make a cake out of a box, then what kind of woman is she, Nathan? What kind of woman is she?
Smart and busy one.
Yeah, that would be my first thought too, yes. But nope. According to men back then, that meant that they were lazy and unable to perform as a housewife. So Betty Crocker kind of got wind of this train of thought, and they decided as a good middle ground, they would take out the powdered eggs that they put in the mix and force you to add your own eggs. And they were just like, okay, well, here. Now they have to learn how to crack an egg. You happy? And also, too, they gave you a bunch of garnish options for making stuff fancy. You know, like, hey, shred a bunch of ginger or whatever and put it on the top kind of thing. So I also went from, like, being like, oh, well, it's obviously just no talent to make cake. Be like, well, she can make garnishes for it, so obviously she's a homemaker. I don't know. It's stupid.
Yeah.
But it was a thing.
Don't focus on the cake itself. Think about the other things to do.
Yes, exactly. Boxed cake mixes. They are indeed handy.
Yeah, I prefer. I mean, I'm fine with any kind of cake, but honestly, for me, the main thing about the cake is the icing. If I had an icing made of nothing but, or if I had a cake made of nothing but icing, I'd be fine.
Called a tub of icing, Nate.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, nothing stopping you. There's no law against eating it straight out of the tub.
I mean, the household.
Yeah.
Although
Dad's been in the bathroom for a real long time, and we keep knocking. He keeps telling us to go away. Oh, he's in there just eating a can of frosting with his bare hand.
Yeah, I probably
my secret shame.
At my age, I shouldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Although I do, my middle Ivy, my middle child, she fucking does that. Like I discovered in the back of the fridge a icing container, and I opened it, and it was almost all gone. And I'm like, I know we haven't had cake quite a while. So
probably just every once in a while would walk by and be like, ooh, frosting, take a spoon full of it and just go on her merry little way.
The thing is, she does this, and she does it like, dude, if you're going to do it, fucking commit. Like, get rid of the evidence. Like, that's one thing about my kids. Like, a lot of times they don't get away with stuff because it's like, you have to learn the art. If you're going to do something bad, you've got to cover it up. Like, you're never going to get away with any crimes. Not that I'm trying to, like, have my kid do crimes, but it's just like, if you're gonna do a crime, fucking try to get away with it. You know, try not to get caught.
You'll find out that they have been getting rid of the evidence. You'll come across this giant stash of like weed and booze in the corner of the basement or something. You're like, oh wow, they were actually keeping things under wrap. Good for them.
Like, you idiot. You caught that because we let you.
Yeah.
You were all
like, I'm both angered and proud of my children at the same time.
Right. Like, you caught that stuff, that's all good and well, but yeah, like, you sucker. Anyway.
Anyways, after boxed cake mixes, next came boxed frosting mixes, which I didn't know was a thing. Just powder that you mix with water, I guess, and you have frosting. Soon it was said that half the cakes in America were being baked with Betty Crocker cake mixes. I don't know if that was an actual, like, statistic they had or if they're just kind of spitballing, but yeah, works good for an advertising campaign.
Oh, yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, Lord knows advertising campaigns haven't lied yet.
Ha! It is the most honest profession in the world as an advertising manager. So we're in 1945 and World War II is over, and Fortune magazine names Betty Crocker the second most recognizable woman in America. Apparently from polling they learned that 90% of American households knew of Betty, second only to the original Georgia Bulldog herself, Eleanor Roosevelt. Among other things, this resulted in Betty Crocker receiving 4,000 letters a day asking for homemaking help. And each week, among those 4,000 letters, she would get an average of 4 to 5 marriage proposals.
I mean, just even if they're like, okay, Betty Crocker existed, and she got a random ass letter. I mean, you don't even know what she looks like. Like, what do you? She shows up. She's like, oh, I'm gonna take this one. She shows up, and she turns out she's just
picture of her. There's that portrait of her made in like 1940 or whatever.
I guess, but no one said it was recent. She shows up.
She's 95 years old.
Yeah, 95 years old, 640 pounds. She's like, hey, you said you wanted to marry me.
People were lonely back then, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, it's like people go on internet dates without meeting people too, so.
I mean, also, I guess, since it's Betty Crocker, you'd think she'd be loaded. He's like, well,
yeah, this is true. Yeah, they're probably going for the money, and you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
I can tolerate a 95-year-old, 600-pound woman if I'm going to get millions of dollars.
Yeah, right. Be heir to the Betty Crocker empire.
Right. I mean, realistically, how much longer do I need to suffer for this? I mean, she might die before the ceremony.
think Great Antonio is one of those people that wrote in Marriage Proposal, taking one of those famous shots that he always took down the field.
You know what? Now that you say that, I refuse to believe otherwise.
Yep.
That happened. That's a fact. Off Topic, Brandon. It actually happened.
I absolutely love that idea. That the Great Antonio was just like, I'm going to marry Betty Crocker. You just watch this. And his existing wife that he was married to is like, I keep telling you. Check out our Great Antonio episode for more on that. Okay, and here's a fun fact that I just kind of threw in there. Why? Because it's interesting. 1946, and General Mills establishes their aeronautical research division with Chief Engineer Otto C. Winzen. Obviously a good American brother. This division developed high-altitude balloons in conjunction with the United States Navy Office of Naval Research. They helped develop the Skyhook balloon, which is a name I recognize, but I'm not sure what it is. So,
Batman.
Batman? Sounds good.
No, Batman. Which one was it? It was Dark Knight. He had the Skyhook. That's how he escaped. He went to Hong Kong, and he fought all those guys in the building, and he got the guy, and the Skyhook came in, grabbed him, and hauled him away. So he got back to Gotham City and dropped the informant off. You're welcome.
I just picture this giant hot air balloon looking thing flying through the air with just Batman just hanging off it with one arm and under his other arm just there. Just hovering all the way from Hong Kong slowly all the way over to Gotham over the Pacific Ocean.
Takes him 4 months. He gets back, the guy's dead from starvation.
Batman's arms are just massive from holding it the entire time.
I'm so tired. Here's your informant.
He didn't make it. Neither did I. Dies on the spot.
He was like the marathon, the original marathon. He's like, here's your guy.
Did the original marathon runner die at the end of that?
According to the story, there was a battle.
Legend.
Wait, maybe the marathon was the battle. There was a battle of marathon, and the dude, an unnamed soldier guy, ran back. They ran 26 miles for everyone, and then informed them the victory and dropped dead. And now it's people do that all the time. That guy must have been out of shape. He must.
Right.
Yeah.
You hear 26 miles, you're like, wow, that's a lot. But then you see people who are running for 70-mile marathons. It's weird stuff like that. I mean,
yeah.
Granted, it's over the course of a couple of days, but still, people run all day.
To be fair, I mean, if I was forced to run 26 miles, I would drop dead at the end too. So
I would probably make it about halfway, find some little village, and be like, I'm just going to stop here and start a new life. Thank you.
Yeah. I died. They can't track me.
Yeah, right?
There's no app that's going to find where I am. I'm going to start a new life right here. They'll figure it out eventually. The battle's won.
Yep. Eventually, the stone tablets will make their way down the road.
Yeah, I mean, the battle was won. They're all dead. It's not like people are going to, not talk about it.
And that's going to do it for the first half on our episode about Betty Crocker. Stay tuned next week when we discuss when the original Betty Crocker quits and why, stories from the test kitchen, the Black Betty Crocker, and what products Betty Crocker has brought us and some fun facts about them. And finally, we get Nate ranting about Star Wars in the way only he can do. This and much more on our Betty Crocker conclusion. This is where the ending jingle goes. This is where the ending jingle goes. I don't know if we need one. I don't know if we'll get one. But if we do, then here is where it goes.